good. Yeah. Hi, Danling. Nice to meet you. Do we have Dr. Gitanjali?
Yep, Geet's here with me. Yep.
Good. Beautiful. All good to go. Keith,
okay, thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
In recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's spiritual connection to country and in continuing ACU's commitment to reconciliation, it is customary to acknowledge country as we pass through. Today, we acknowledge and pay our respects to the First Peoples, traditional custodians of the lands and waterways. We thank them for the continual custodianship. We acknowledge and celebrate the continuation of a living culture that has a unique role in this region and on all campuses of ACU. We also acknowledge elders past and present and thank them for the wisdom and guidance as we walk in their footsteps. Thank you. So I'd like to welcome everyone to this confirmation of candidature for Danling Huang. She is being supervised by Professor John Marshall Reed, Principal Supervisor, co-supervised by Professor Herb Marsh, Associate Professor Therese Dickey, and Dr. Heren Zhang. Today's expert panel is chaired by Dr. Fran Fernandez, and also the expert panel members are Dr. Gitanjali Bhaskar and Professor Helen Watt from the University of Sydney. So, Fran, I'll just hand over to you. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much, Ricky, for introducing everyone. That's very helpful. And hi, Danling. Nice to meet you. So basically, how it's going to work, and thanks to both expert panel to be here today to give a bit of a feedback on the work that you read and on the work that Danling is going to present now. So Danling, usually you have around 20 minutes to present your work. If you go a bit over, don't worry, please take as long as you need. And then the panel of experts will ask you a few questions, and the audience as well, if you're allowed, it. And we will then ask you to leave the meeting, and we will meet with a closed panel, meaning your supervisor and the expert panel, just to go through basically a form to give you a bit of a written feedback for you to consider when you're going to continue your candidature. And at the end of this, so we will officially confirm you in your candidature, and so that's a yay. You can breathe, and you will be then able to apply for ethics and for funding if needed as well. Is it clear for you, Danling? Do you have any question?
No, all good. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So you can share your slide, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And we can see them now online. Thank you so much.
Right, everyone, thank you very much for being here or online for my CoC presentation. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Danling Huang, and my supervisors have been introduced by Ricky. Thank you. And today my topic is developing teacher self-efficacy. And just to clarify, that is not me, in case you didn't notice. And here's my outline, which consists of 5 sections. And I'm going to start with what I'm studying and why. So basically, I'm studying teacher self-efficacy. And it is the belief about what teachers can do. And why I'm studying it, it is because teachers today are faced with sheer workload and stress. And teacher shortages has been a critical issue around the world. So self-efficacy seems to be a very positive self-belief, just like the famous gift baby here. And teacher self-efficacy seems to be related to so many good things like job satisfaction, student achievement, etc. So I was thinking, if it's so good, why don't I develop it to a greater level? So that's where my topic came from. And now let's look more closely at what is self-efficacy and what is teacher self-efficacy. Here I need to cite Bandura, who's behind all this. He defined self-efficacy as beliefs in one's capabilities to organize or execute the courses of action required to produce given attainments. This might sound complicated, but basically it's one's beliefs about whether they can do something. Okay, and it is task-specific construct, meaning I might believe I can ride a bike, but I don't necessarily believe I can drive a car, which is exactly my situation. And it is also condition-specific, which means one might believe they can drive a car in places like America or China where people drive on the right, but they might not believe they can drive in places like England or Australia where people drive on the left. It is also criterion specific, which means people might believe they can drive to at a speed of 100 kilometers per hour, but if you ask them whether they can drive at a speed of 500 kilometers an hour, they might say, "You crazy?" So that's 3 specific criterion for self-efficacy belief. In terms of teacher self-efficacy, researchers tend to believe that or define it as teachers' beliefs or judgments about their capabilities to promote student learning. And I've got an example from Shannon Moran and Hoy here, which is one of the widely cited definition. But if we look closely at the outline part, underlined part here, to bring about desired outcomes of student engagement and learning is actually an outcome expectancy. Outcome expectancy refers to the beliefs about whether certain actions can produce certain outcomes, whereas self-efficacy is the beliefs about whether one can produce certain actions. So, for example, if I believe I can deliver this presentation today within 20 minutes, is completely different from I believe I can pass my CoC, okay? So outcome expectation needs to be differentiated from the definition of self-efficacy or teacher self-efficacy. That is why I'm defining teacher self-efficacy here as a teacher's judgment about their capabilities to successfully perform specific teaching tasks under specific teaching conditions. I've got an example like a teacher might believe they can teach students about the pronunciation or the writing of 3 English alphabets, say ABC, in a 3-minute lesson. That's an example of teacher self-efficacy belief. And teacher make these judgments based on whatever sources, resources, or whatever skills they have. And they might ask themselves the question, can I do it? Okay. And when looking at the literature in teacher self-efficacy, it is not difficult to find that it is related to many teacher variables and student variables. For example, it's positively correlated with teacher profession commitment, job satisfaction, and motivation, etc. And also positively correlated with student achievement, engagement, and motivation, etc. And negatively correlated with teacher burnout and stress, all looking good, which is exactly what I wanted. However, we all know John Marshall has been a big critic. This is where he jumped out and asked this critical question: are you sure teacher self-efficacy predicts or causes all these changes or all these variables? And that got me think real hard. And I was just like this little guy here with all those question marks in my head. But I didn't look this calm. And I was like scratching my head, pulling out my hair. And if you notice, I've got thinner hair than 6 months ago. And I went back to read the literature again, and I did find some issues in the literature, including most of these studies are cross-sectional studies where correlation doesn't mean causality. And when looking at the few longitudinal studies, the predictive power of teacher self-efficacy actually vanishes or weakens. For example, in one of Teresa and colleagues' papers in 2015, teacher self-efficacy didn't predict teacher emotional exhaustion. And in another study done by someone else in 2013, teacher self-efficacy only predicted teacher ratings of their instructional quality, but not student ratings, which also might have something to do with the level 1, level 2 analysis issues. And the third issue I found was that there have been arguments about the third variable effect. So for example, all these variables, they might have been caused by some other factors, confounding factors like outcome expectation, we just mentioned, or teacher self-concept. So there seem to be a lot of unresolved issues before I can confidently say that, oh, teacher self-efficacy causes all this, so that I can develop it. So that question stopped me from falling off the cliff and potentially dying. I have to solve these problems to confirm that teacher self-efficacy is actually important and causes all those changes, positive outcomes, so that I can develop it. That is why I have these research questions. I'm asking, can teacher self-efficacy, does teacher self-efficacy have a significant causal effect on those positive outcomes? If it does, what are the reliable and valid sources for greater teacher self-efficacy? And can greater teacher self-efficacy be developed in an intervention that integrates its sources? And my studies will be based on two theories, one of which is social cognitive theory, of course, from Albert Bandura. And in this theory, cognitive is related to teacher self-efficacy belief because it is a cognitive process. And social is related to the sources of teacher self-efficacy that I'm going to study. And it's also based on self-determination theory, just because I knew Rich Ryan would be here. Just kidding. SCT actually provides a very good example for good teaching practice, especially in ACIP workshops. For those of you who don't know ACIP, it refers to autonomy support intervention programs developed by my lovely supervisor, John Marshall and Hayren. And teachers in ACIP, they learn to support student autonomy by or through autonomy supportive teaching skills, instructional skills, including perspective taking, interest support, and value support. And these are my proposed studies. So to answer the first question, I'm going to do a longitudinal study, or it is a longitudinal study for study 1, to answer that question of the causal effect of teacher self-efficacy. Just like the cute little penguin here, if it believes it can fly, does it really make a difference even though it doesn't have the skills? Okay. So my first hypothesis are these blue lines here. I expect that teacher self-efficacy and teacher skills are reciprocally related. It was hypothesized before by Bandura, but it's not been fully tested. So I'm going to test it first in this model. And then my second hypothesis is these two purple lines here. I expect that teacher skills will causally increase later positive outcomes when controlling for teacher self-efficacy. And also, teacher self-efficacy causally increase positive outcomes when controlling for teacher skills. It aims to test whether teacher self-efficacy has the unique and independent causal effect on those positive outcomes above and beyond other factors. Okay. Once it's confirmed, I hope I can move on to other studies. And for this study, I'm going to use secondary data set. Luckily, my supervisors have collected them before in Australia and Korea that I can use, including these variables. And teacher self-efficacy is teacher reported, and other variables are student reported. And I'm going to use a doubly latent multi-level structural equation model in M+, which is one of the many things Herb is famous for. That is why it looks a bit complicated here. And to answer research question 2.
I'll take that as a compliment.
It is.
But that's my story.
To answer research question 2, what are the reliable and valid sources of teacher self-efficacy? I'm going to do a critique and systematic review of the existing literature in the sources of teacher self-efficacy. Why a critique, you may wonder, and I've got reasons again. So there has been a long list of sources of teacher self-efficacy identified by researchers, including including Bandura's 4 hypothesized sources of self-efficacy, such as mastery experience, vicarious experience, social persuasion, and physiological and emotional states. However, these studies, their research designs don't seem rigorous enough. Like most of them use qualitative data collected through like in interviews with teachers or their written reflections, which doesn't demonstrate a causal effect. And the analysis has some issues on level 1 and level 2 variables as well. Also, there are some alternative interpretations, over the 4 sources of self-efficacy, such as like some people think knowledge, which is cognitive experience, can be treated as mastery experience, which is not true. And some people also think student feedback can be counted as social persuasion, which is also not convincing. That is why I need a critical review to solve these 2 questions, like what the issues are out there, and what can qualify as high quality studies that demonstrate a causal effect of the sources on teacher self-efficacy, so that I can do a systematic review to answer the question, what actually causes teacher self-efficacy to change? So the critique or critical review actually is helping me shape a better idea to get to extract or screen out those high quality studies. And for the systematic review, I'm going to use either Prisma or Covidence to do that. I don't know how to yet, but I'm sure I will learn. And to answer research question 3, whether greater teacher self-efficacy can be developed in an intervention that integrates the sources, I'm going to see if an improved intervention can be developed. When I say improved, I mean I will integrate the sources of self-efficacy, the reliable sources from study 2, into ASIP workshop, which will become the new ASIP workshop, as in the model here. So my hypothesis one is about the traditional AC. I expect there will be significant longitudinal gains in teacher self-efficacy in traditional AC compared to the control group. I also expect there will be significant longitudinal gains in the in teacher self-efficacy in new AC when integrating the sources compared to the traditional AC. So these two hypotheses actually are testing whether it is necessary to, or it is helpful to integrate the sources of teacher self-efficacy into a workshop. If it is, that means there might be other ways to increase teacher self-efficacy instead of just like teaching teachers new skills, okay, or new improved skills. And as a bonus, I'm also going to double check if the intervention increased or intervention enabled increase in teacher self-efficacy predicts the positive outcome again. And this study is basically using the similar data collection and data analysis methods, except it's an experimental study, which means I will have to collect data myself, not using secondary data. And I plan to recruit at least 60 teachers and their students, either in Australia, China, or England, where I have connections. And finally, as you can see in this timeline, I'm in the 6th month of my 3-year study, and I've been learning and reading. And fortunately, both my study 1 and study 2 are going to use secondary data. So it saves me a lot of time to collect data. But in study 3, I will need to collect data, which will take longer, like ethics and intervention. But again, my lovely supervisors have all the experience and materials ready. I just need to add in some new elements about the sources. So I have the self-efficacy to manage my project in 3 years. All that said, I can see a lot of changes, like constant changes and ups and downs, sometimes tears across these 3 years. So I would appreciate any questions, suggestions, and comments to make this project better. Thank you very much.
Well done, Danling. You explained this very clearly with very nice illustration and example. Thank you so much. I'm going to open the floor to any question, starting with probably the expert panel. Helen or Qi, if one of you want to start.
Yeah, I'm happy to start.
Yeah, thank you, Helen. Yeah.
So thank you, Danling, and I agree that this is an area plagued by causal interpretations of correlational effects. So it's good that you're going in there. I had 3 large categories of comment.
Yeah.
So the first was definitional. So I could see from your figure 1 that it looks like the self-efficacies that you'll be looking at are the TSES factors by Shannon Moran and Woolfolk Hoy, but you didn't discuss about that at all in your written proposal. So that would be good to explain what the dimensions are. And related, I'm still on the first point here, also definition more of the outcomes. So the skills of the teachers, the positive outcomes of the students, and in all of that, thinking about the match, because as you outlined importantly at the start, that self-efficacy is task, condition, and criterion specific. So what kind of match is there sensibly between the self-efficacy dimension and the outcome, because there should be some match for us to expect some causal effect. So that's my first of the 3 points. My second point is encouraging you to think further about the nature of the role that self-efficacy may play. So at the moment, it's all linear predictions. So 2 suggestions here. One, in terms of whether the extent to which one's self-efficacy is maybe unrealistically high or unrealistically low compared to one's skills, whether that might be important. And also whether, as well as a main predictor, if self-efficacy might also play an important moderation role. And my third of my main points. So you talked about Bandura's 4 main sources of self-efficacy, but I wonder what you think about person versus situation generality or specificity. So would you consider having the same teacher in different classes with different students teaching different subjects? Or would you be thinking to pick one somehow, I'm not sure how, like their favourite subject or their first class on a Monday? Or so would you be deciding to isolate on a particular context for some reason? Or would you be interested in the contextual specificity versus what might be a more stable person effect and property? So they're my 3 main sets of points.
So thank you so much, Helen. Danling, do you want to comment or answer some of this comment, or just you take note of this and you agree with that? Yeah.
And I can also,
yeah.
Oh, I can also send this in an email after, if that's helpful.
Oh yeah, we will. Yeah, we will discuss. Yeah, about that. Thank you so much, Helen. Much appreciate. Yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we could. Danny, we cannot hear you. Helen, can you hear Danling or?
No.
No, me neither. Yeah, sorry. Ricky, there is a problem, I think. We could hear you very well before.
Yeah.
And
Sorry
now?
about
that. Oh, yes, cool. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Technology.
Yeah, sorry, Helen, you were saying?
Oh, you
no,
didn't hear what? Yes, it's just sorry. I was. Did you hear what Helen said about the Freeman
Yes, I did.
category?
So
do you want to comment, or you're happy to move on and you take this in?
Yeah, no, I just want to thank Helen for pointing out those very essential issues like definition and dimensions. And I also like to comment on your last question about generality and specificity. I did think about that too, because I think it's quite interesting, because it's been like argued that the wording or the wording of the items or the specificity of the items, the scale, can have effects on the predictive power of teacher self-efficacy. So it would be very interesting and exciting to see whether it predicts under different conditions or different specificities. So yeah, I would definitely take that as a great suggestion. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen and Danling. I think, G, do you want to comment or ask or comment or ask any question?
Yeah, I've got a few questions. Are you able to hear me online?
Yeah, very, not so good.
Very good. Thank you.
You can hear me.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Sorry it.
No, all good. So firstly, I think, Danling, that was a really excellent presentation. It was very clear that you had a good understanding of the literature, and the flow of 3 studies was also really good. It makes logical sense the way that you've structured it, and to have the meta-analysis after you do the first study. I had a couple of questions about study 1.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that in the literature, most of the studies are correlation.
Yeah.
And so we don't know too much about causality, whether there's a third variable effect, and so on. How does the method that you propose to use sort of get at answering those questions or filling those gaps?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. So to answer whether it does have a causal effect on those outcomes, it has to be at least longitudinal study with 3 time waves of data collection, and I'm going to test the predictivity of teacher self-efficacy at precedent time wave on the outcome variables at subsequent time waves to see if there's if T or F, the number of T and F, if they are significant. If they are, that means it predicts. But also, most importantly, I need to control for other factors like teacher skill in my model, or also if there are some other factors, they need to be controlled, like the precedent factors need to be controlled as well. So it needs to have a unique independent predictive power. That means the path from teacher self-efficacy to the outcome variable is significant on its own, instead of but Helen mentioned mediator as well. So the mediation, if it works as a mediator, I guess it also does its predictive power in there. So I think I'm going to work on the two ways to test, in case you have any other suggestions.
I'm sure the method does answer the questions. I was just curious to know your understanding of how it does, because I would suggest adding that in the written document as well, in terms of, you very clearly stated what the gaps are, and then you said the methodology, but the connection between what the method is and how it fills those gaps could be expanded.
Okay.
Yeah. And still with study 1. So when you were talking about the previous literature, you mentioned that a few studies that have looked at longitudinal data sets have shown weak relationships between, or weak predictive effects of teacher self-efficacy on student outcomes or other teacher outcomes.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit concerned because of that, that if you find that there's no results in study 1, what happens to study 2 and 3?
Yeah.
I mean, so you only stated 2 papers, so I'm not sure if there are others that have mixed results, or whether there's very likely that it does have some positive results, but I was just, a little bit worried about that.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, actually. And I think it's quite possible that I might not find the causal effect in study 1, which means there will be no study 2 or study 3. No, that's the fun part. That's the fun part. So even though that's the case, I think that means maybe the way we define teacher self-efficacy, or the way we've been measuring it, is not actually teacher self-efficacy. So that's probably why it's not predicting anything, or it doesn't demonstrate a predictive power strong enough. So if that's the case, there's a lot of work to do, and then we need to go back to the core issues to redefine or remeasure teacher self-efficacy from the beginning. And like I said, it's a positive self-belief. I personally believe it will do something, it's important. But are we on the right direction, or are we understanding it correctly and thoroughly? That's the issue that need to be solved. And yeah, Herb's done some like not discussion, like debate with other researchers over this issue. So I believe there's a lot of potential of future studies to do on that.
And I'm sure because you break it down between L1 and L2, figure out like where there will be a bit more clarity on where the effects. I'm sure by the effects, it's just you mentioned those couple of studies and I hadn't picked up on that when I was reading through. So it's just as long it sounds like you've thought about it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that.
It's important
Any
to emphasize that self-efficacy is an outcome in itself. And even if it doesn't have the predictive effects that you're looking for, it's not that doesn't invalidate looking at sources of self-efficacy and attempting to improve self-efficacy. It certainly will detract and it will be a major blow to the theoretical, but it's not to say that studies 2 and 3 are irrelevant. And as you said, there's different ways of looking at it.
Yeah, thank you.
I had a question. There's one dominant measure of teacher self-efficacy, and sort of in passing you rummaged it. Are there any teacher self-efficacy measures that are squeaky clean according to your criteria?
Well, to be honest, I don't think I have found any yet. Even though Bandura himself developed one scale with, I think, about 30 items using. I'm confident that I can do something, but yeah, that one is more specific than the others. It covers a wider range of tasks, but in order to reach the criteria of like condition specific or criterion specific, I think we might need to go for what you suggested for student academic self-efficacy, like measure way. Like it has to be task specific with certain criteria under certain condition. That might also lead to another issue, which means there are so many tasks in teaching. So how can we measure all those tasks like in one scale? So I haven't figured out how to yet, but it's interesting to look at and also develop new scales to better measure teacher self-efficacy. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think there's a real conundrum between specificity and generalizability.
Yeah.
And that the original notion of self-efficacy is very specific, task-specific, criterion-specific, and condition-specific, as you pointed out. But if you have all that specificity, then generalizability is shot.
Yeah.
And it's really, and that was Bandura during his career wrestled a lot with that and started off in one extreme and sort of vacillated toward the other extreme. And my sense is that you can't have a generalizable measure of self-efficacy. It's a contradiction of terms, and that makes it very difficult.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Your presentation was good. I felt that you picked up on major points. It was definitely an improvement from the last time that I heard you make it. So you've made some good progress. That's really good.
Thank you.
I think the issue of mediation is one that you're going to have to get your head around.
Yeah.
And in the same way as study 1, you're sort of assuming that teacher self-efficacy and positive outcomes are reciprocally related. It's very likely that your so-called sources have the same issue. And so the sources contribute to self-efficacy, but some the self-efficacy measure may contribute to the source and some of the sources as well. And particularly when you open up Pandora's box as to what sources means. And then you get into a difficult situation as to what's a source of self-efficacy as opposed to what is self-efficacy.
Yeah.
Those are the thorny problems that you're going to have to net out. In a sense, not study one, because you're working with secondary data, so you're stuck with what you're looking at. Study two is going to be a mess because the literature is so complicated in relation to that. And study three, it'll be beholden upon you to come up with the perfect measure of teacher self-efficacy. But probably you'll be able to, because the focus of your intervention has task specific, condition specific, and criterion specific.
Yeah, thank you so much for pointing that out. Those are really helpful, and I'll keep looking and working on those. Hopefully, like I said, I hope I still have the self-efficacy at my mid-candidature review and final year review.
So Fran, I've just got a Rich.
Yeah.
Well, anticipated that you're going to make it to study three, which what you cast doubt on. But when you get to study three, what's the self-efficacy for? Self-efficacy for what?
Hey, Ricky, can you repeat the question because we cannot hear much here?
Sorry, can you come closer? They couldn't hear you.
Sorry.
No,
So sorry.
in study three, you have a specific model.
Yeah.
In which you're going to use self-efficacy, but because it has to be specific.
Yeah.
Specific self-efficacy for what? Specific for in student engagement, self-efficacy, because that's an outcome that's been used in the intervention studies in the past.
Yeah.
Is that what the targeted measure is going to be?
Yeah, good question. I mean, even though we don't like the measurement of teacher self-efficacy so far, we are still using one of the most commonly used one, which is Shannon, Moran, and Boyce one. It measures teacher self-efficacy for classroom management, for student engagement, and for instructional strategies. So it covers three aspects of teacher self-efficacy. But like we were talking about, it's still not enough. It's not specific enough. So we might have come up with something else in the study three. So maybe measure each specific behavior of teachers specifically. I don't know, but that's a possibility. But thank you for bringing that up.
Are you going to be busy? Yeah. Any further question in the room?
I'm saying that the teacher self-efficacy measure has to be specific to what you're trying to do in the intervention.
Yeah.
And because the intervention is fairly specific, it would be inappropriate to have a shotgun. You don't want a shotgun. You want something that's specific to your intervention. And in that sense, you address the generalizability specificity issue because you're going for something specific.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, probably we'll stick to that one.
Thank you so much. Any other question in the room? Or?
I got one more from Emma here. You're right, Em.
A curious
Sorry,
question,
Ma.
more so than one that's going to be hugely consequential for your study. I'm interested in the how of your independent effects in study one for teacher self-efficacy. So I think it makes sense, especially on like student outcomes as opposed to teacher outcomes. I think it makes total sense that if a teacher's self-efficacy is reflective of their skills, that should probably affect student outcomes because they're probably a good teacher and that's why they feel like it. But if they feel like a good teacher and controlling for skills, why would that link to it positively to a student's outcomes? Why do you think, like, what kind of atmosphere or process is going on there that will mean that their feeling of being good is good for student outcomes independent of their being good?
Yeah. Thank you, Emma. That's actually a very good question to think about. Yeah. yeah, I think like the feeling of being a good teacher, right? That I don't think that's actually the teacher self-efficacy belief. Yeah, because that's more like teacher self-concept. How good am I and how well I did.
You're right. I'm talking more in the generalities. Like if you had the right measure and you were asking the right kind of thing,
Yeah.
why does a very specific task criteria and condition specific self-efficacy affect students controlling the skills?
Yeah. So regarding that part, I think going back to the nature role of teacher self-efficacy, which is like a positive self-belief, I think it will influence teachers' behaviors, and they will, if they have the self-efficacy belief, they tend to be more resilient or more willing to try new things in their teaching. That has been proved. So if their behaviors can be affected by their self-efficacy beliefs, the behaviors can lead to some outcomes, like student outcomes, like you said. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's why I thought teacher self-efficacy was important in the beginning, but I don't know yet. It's not it's not for sure. Yes, please.
I just want to point out your question related to Helen was discussing earlier about calibration and overestimation, underestimation, and accuracy of self-efficacy. Do you want an overestimator?
Yeah.
I think, is that beneficial? Or
It's hard to hear. Sorry again. Yeah, Ricky, do you want to repeat the question or?
Oh, it's just a comment from John
Oh,
Marshall.
comment. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sorry. Sorry. I just want to make sure I'm not, to write back for you. Then we can choose more about that.
I think we're good here. We're good here, Fran. Thank you.
Okay, good. I've got a very quick one, Danling, if you allow me.
Yeah, of course.
So you have secondary data from which year of students? So I suppose that was university student you were talking about when I saw the semester, because actually I think this you're not teaching the same way in first year than in third year, for example. So are you going to try to be consistent in like with the data the secondary data you have? Do you know which year they are, and are you going to keep this for your intervention after in study 3?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Fran. Yeah, for the secondary data set we have, they are secondary students. So I think in study 3, I'm also planning to collect data from secondary students because we think for school teachers, there's more like classroom activities or classroom teaching happening for school teachers. And if it's university teachers, they are still teachers and they still have their own teacher self-efficacy, but their tasks might involve something more alongside with teaching, like probably research or something else. So yeah, that's a good question. I think we are going to, or I am going to stick to collecting data from school students and school teachers. Yeah.
But
So both.
Primary.
Oh, secondary or primary? I don't have a preference for that. Do you think it matters?
Yeah.
I mean, it's much more complicated to collect the primary school students.
Okay.
But primary school teachers they're with the student mostly for the whole day.
Yeah.
Whereas secondary teachers are with them for 4 periods a week or 3 periods a week, or certainly no more than an hour a day. So there's fundamental differences. So that's a really key issue. But you'll probably know more about that by the time you finish your systematic review.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, thank you.
I think it would be easier to do it in secondary school.
Yeah.
I think it might be more interesting to do it in primary.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I'll think about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Got one very quick one as well. You said you're going to do 60 teacher in your intervention study.
Yeah.
How did you come up with this number? Did you do a power calculation based on what? Yeah. This will
Yeah.
be asked probably for your ethics application. So I'm just, like preparing
Yeah,
you for it.
yeah. No, it's a very good question, because I used to have over 200 up there when I didn't know what is the practical number or a right number. But like I said, my supervisors have the experience of conducting ASIC workshops and giving interventions to teachers, and the number they successfully done before was about 20 teachers in each group, in each condition group. So I have 3 condition groups in my study 3. That's why I need at least 60 teachers to meet that standard and do the analysis for that.
Makes
Yeah,
sense,
but
yes.
I'm happy if I can recruit more. So if I can meet
Yeah.
200, that would be great. Yeah.
How long are you going to stay, doing your PhD for then? Yeah, no, it's just, something to justify, but you did justify very well. It's based on previous study and the experience of your supervisor. So that's completely fine. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Done very well. Any further question, anyone?
We're clear here. Thanks, Fran.
Beautiful. Right, thank you so much, Danling. So I'm going to thank everyone for coming to support Danling in her confirmation. And I'm just going to keep online, please, the expert panel. So Ellen and G, if you don't mind, staying there, and supervisor as well in the room. And Danling, if you don't mind, stepping out for a bit, and maybe one of your supervisor can ask you to come back at the end of when we finish to meet. Yeah, if you don't mind. But well done again. You've done very well. Yes.
Yeah, thank you
well
all so
done.
much.
All right, so we're just going to wait a bit here for